Okay, so before I start talking about this build, just take 15 seconds and look at this. I'm gonna be back here in like 15 seconds. Enjoy. So, how was this 15 seconds? Did you ever see anything like this in this game? If not, well, probably stay tuned and I will give you everything about this build. Okay, so here's the updated version of my Omnipower chainlightnig build, and it is better than I anticipated. It is so much fun to play it, it just turns Diablo into a completely new experience for me. This build is gonna turn you into a freaking chainlightnig, freezing, explosion, whatever, everything, kill, everything god. So if you're looking for a Nightmare Dungeon mid-tier farming build which allows you to run through dungeons like a freaking lightning god maniac guy, like this is the build for you. Like, I just want to make one thing really clear, this is not a tier 100 pushing build, this is a farming build, so if you're like between level 80 and level 100, you can use this build to farm mid-tier level Nightmare Dungeons up to like probably like level 65. I don't think it makes sense to actually farm dungeons any higher tier anyway, everything above that I would consider tier 100 pushing. But I'm also still working on the tier 100 pushing build that will not use this whole frozen story, but I will have that out for you very soon as well, probably like 2 or 3 days from now. And also I want to talk about Barber Heart real quick. So this is not a Barber build. I could take the Barber Heart and put it into my amulet right now and this build would be 3 times stronger directly. It is not about beating Barber. This is not possible at this point. Barber pretty much turns every build into a whatever YOLO massive AoE tier 100 pushing build. I'm looking for something more fun here and I'm looking for a challenge. I'm not looking to beat the current Barber meta. And also I'm pretty sure Barber is gonna get nerfed to the ground pretty soon, so don't get too addicted with this little Barber heart. The core of this build is using some unique items like Frostburn and Lucky Hit to use the Omnipower chainlightnings to freeze everything and then explode them in Frost Novas. It's gonna generate a massive amount of crackling energy and spawn ball lightnings all over the place. You will see your entire screen be filled with numbers and it's just like so much fun to play. In this video I will show you everything for this build. So we're going to start with the skills we use, then we're going to go over the skill tree, then we're going to look at legendary aspects and caged hearts, then the Paragon Board, and last but not least the item priority and stat priority of course. But before we deep dive into the build, I will just give you a brief overview on what powers this build and how this build works at all. So if you're new to Diablo or if you're just not familiar, haven't checked out the caged heart of the Omnipower yet, I will pretty much explain you all the effects and all the synergies in this build and how they work together. Okay, so what are we actually doing here? So we're using the caged heart of the Omnipower and that allows us to essentially spend our entire mana pool to launch additional projectile skills. We are using chainlightnig, which is a projectile skill, and with our setup to have like 180 mana, we can launch 5 to 6 chainlightnings at a time. This will then consume our entire mana pool, and then we start using synergies to regenerate our mana very quickly. These synergies are Recharging Aspect for regenerating mana on chainlightning bounces, the Invigorating Conduit passive, which just regenerates mana whenever we pick up crackling energy, and also the mana regeneration on Lucky Hit from items. And as you can imagine, after we got 100% of our mana back, we can launch another 5 or 6 chainlightnings again. These chainlightnings then apply Lucky Hit effects. So we have a massive number of bounces from our chainlightnings and every bounce can actually apply a Lucky Hit effect. And our Lucky Hit effects in this build will be the Ball Lightning enchantment, which spawns a static Ball Lightning. Another Lucky Hit effect we are using is going to be the Frostburn unique, which allows us to instantly freeze enemies. And also comes with a resource generation on hit lucky hit effect, which is pretty handy. We use the aspect of shared misery, which will spread the crowd control effects applied by our lightning spears and also by our frostburn unique. And then lastly we use another lucky hit effect, which allows us to spawn more crackling energy. So since that's a lot of lucky hit effects, and as we are launching 5 chain lightnings at a time, we basically have also a 5 times higher chance to proc these lucky hit effects. So certainly this is probably not how Blizzard intended lucky hit to work. As I say, they call it lucky hit, but in this case it's actually more like a guaranteed hit. Okay, that is everything for the introduction. Let's look how we melt down this boss here real quick, and then next we're gonna jump into the skill tree. For the skill tree, we just put 2 points into Frostbolt to gain access to our core skills. We're not using any basic skills here. 2 points into Devastation and 3 points into Elemental Dominance. We are always going to be casting above 50 mana, so that's a free 9% damage here. Then we max out Chain Lightning with Enhanced Chain Lightning and Destructive Chain Lightning. I'm experimenting to use Greater Chain Lightning at this point, but I still cannot generate enough crackling energy. If I get some more lucky hit, maybe I can switch this. I'm not spending any points in defensive skills because I have a +3 on my amulet, so I get Flame Shield, Teleport for free. The only points I will put in Frost Nova, Enhanced Frost Nova and Mystical Frost Nova. We put 3 points into Glass Cannon and 1 point into Elemental Attunement, as you pretty much do in every single sorcerer build. We put 1 point into Align the Elements and 3 points into Mana Shield. Mana Shield is active all the time because we're gonna spending a hell lot of mana. I do not know at this point if this stacks, so if you actually spend 200 mana within 5 seconds, if you actually get 42%, no idea, maybe, maybe not. And 3 points into Protection, this is our main barrier generator. Then 3 points into Precision Magic, since we need the lucky hit chance. 1 point into Ice Blades, this helps us to keep vulnerable up if we really running out of Frost Nova charges or anything. Then we put Lightning Spear with Enhanced Lightning Spear and Invoked Lightning Spear for the stun. We put 3 points into Conjuration Mastery, and it's pretty nice if you can get another +3 on your amulet. Since we are using the Lightning Spear enchant, Conjuration Mastery gives us a lot of extra damage. There's times where we have like 12 to 14 Lightning Spears active at a time. It doesn't happen a whole lot, but in average I would say it's like 4 to 8. 1 point into Ball Lightning and 1 point into Enhanced Ball Lightning and 1 point into Wizard's Ball Lightning, because we are using the Ball Lightning enchant here. Then we put 3 points into Static Discharge to generate more crackling energy and 3 points into Invigorating Conduit to get the mana regeneration up and running. 1 point into Permafrost just to get access to Hoarfrost. Hoarfrost gives us a nice 18% damage increase to frozen enemies, and in this build all enemies are going to be pretty much frozen all the time. We use Unstable Currents with Prime Unstable Currents. And we use 1 point into Causing Currents to get access to Electrocution, which gives us a nice little damage reduction. And for the ultimate passive, it kind of depends how your playstyle is. If you are like running a little lower dungeons, definitely go with Overflowing Energy. If you're having a little bit trouble with survivability, definitely go for Verse Mastery. If you are lower levels, what you can do is you can get Shatter. I know this is not a Frost build, but enemies which die are always going to be frozen, and Shatter actually works very, very nice with this build. It starts falling off at higher tiers, but if you are running lower tiers, definitely give Shatter a try. For our skills, we use Unstable Currents, like this is a lightning build, so yes, we use it, obviously. We have Frost Nova, which is our main vulnerable applicator. Then we use Teleport. We use Flame Shield as our main defensive skill. Chain Lightning, obviously, as our core skill. And then we use Ice Blades. Ice Blades we use because sometimes we are out of Frost Nova charges and we just need to get vulnerable up, and that is just done by using Ice Blades. In our enchantment slots we use Ball Lightning enchantment. This is like a very strong lucky hit effect, and we use the Lightning Spear enchantment, so whenever we pick up Crackling Energy it's going to be spawning Lightning Spears, and we are going to be picking up a lot of Crackling Energy here. Okay, legendary aspects and unique items. First, I'm going to be showing you the aspects and the items, and after that I'm going to revisit the optimal stat priorities. Let's start with our defensive aspects. We are using the aspect of Shared Misery to spread our crowd control, and we are using the aspect of Disobedience, and this is the strongest defensive aspect in the game. This is already everything for our defensive aspects in this build because we are using unique items in the other slots. For our offensive aspects, we are using the Elementalist aspect on our necklace. This gives us a nice 60% critical strike chance while above 100 mana. We are going to be above 100 mana most of the time. You need to get a little bit used to the play style, but actually it is not a very big deal. Then we are using the aspect of Control on one of our rings. This gives us a 35% damage increase against stunned or frozen enemies. This is pretty much active all the time. We use the aspect of Unbroken Tether to get additional chainlightnig bounces. This is pretty much a no-brainer. And what makes this build work is we use the recharging aspect, which gives our chainlightnig the ability to regenerate mana on every bounce. And last but not least, we use the accelerating aspect to bump our attack speed. This is already it for the aspects. Then we are using 3 unique items in this build. We are using the Frostburn unique item. This gives us mana regeneration on lucky hit and freeze on lucky hit. So this basically makes all the freezing stuff happen. It procs all the time and Shared Misery spreads it all the time. Then we use the Ice Heart Pants. The Ice Heart Pants gives us freeze duration and some bonus damage to frozen enemies, and also it makes frozen enemies which die unleash a Frost Nova. So the biggest problem with chainlightnig builds is applying vulnerable. With this, in a regular scenario, there's always going to be enemies dying and making those Frost Novas, and those Frost Novas then apply the vulnerable. And last but not least, we're using the Penitent Greaves. This gives us additional crowd control duration, which is pretty nice for this build. And also this gives us a nice 10% damage increase to chilled enemies. Frozen enemies do count as chilled, though this is pretty much a free multiplicator for our damage. So let's talk about item and stat priorities. I'm now telling you what priorities I have and what I'm still looking for. So on our helmet, we definitely want crowd control duration, we want total armor, we want max life, and we want a bonus to mana. Probably one of this can go, most likely depending on the tier you play. Either you can switch the maximum life for lucky hit chance while you have a barrier, or you could get rid of the total armor. On our chest we want damage reduction and total armor, then we want another damage reduction stat, like damage reduction from close enemies is a pretty good one, and we can get a damage stat like shock skill damage in this case, or you can obviously get maximum life here. The next 3 items are going to be unique, so we cannot do anything about the stats here, but let's just talk about it still. The Frostborn gives us freeze duration and 2 lucky hit effects. The other 2 stats are pretty much wasted. Well, the critical strike chance is not wasted technically, but we don't really need it. The Ice Heart Pants gives us intelligence and damage to frozen enemy, which is pretty good for our DPS. Damage to injured enemies is pretty much a waste, but it's still there. Freeze duration is nice for our build since we are working on freezing everything, and obviously this enables our nice little Frost Nova mechanics here. So the Penitent Greaves gives us movement speed, which is good, crowd control duration, which is very good for this build. The other two stats, slow duration and cold resistance, are pretty much wasted. And the legendary power gives us additional damage. On our wand, we want to have vulnerable damage. Unfortunately, I don't have it. Then you can have main stat or all stats and critical strike damage plus probably lightning critical strike damage. And you want to socket a sapphire for more critical strike damage to crowd controlled enemies. On our focus, we want lucky hit to restore resources, we want resource generation, we want lucky hit chance, and we want lucky hit chance while you have a barrier. You could switch out one of the lucky hit ones, probably the one with barrier, for crowd control duration, but this is pretty much not mandatory. On our rings, we want one ring with maximum mana, maybe we want two rings with maximum mana, we want critical strike chance, we want vulnerable damage, which I don't have on the rings, and then we want maximum life. And finally, on our amulet, we want movement speed, conjuration mastery, defensive skills, and the open slot can be anything. I have % intelligence here for damage multiplicator, but you can probably get a better one. I will include the optimal items and stat priorities in the planner link in the description down below, so don't get too focused on the stats I have. My stats are not perfect yet. Just check out the planner. I will put all the dream stats in there. Okay, let's talk about Caged Heart. Obviously, we are using the Caged Heart of the Omnipower since this is powering our build. You want to have a good roll. If you have a 44 or 45, it's not gonna work out very well. You want to have a 35 to 37 roll. If you have problems with finding a good Caged Heart of the Omnipower, right now Wrathful Invokers are not really rare anymore, so you can get groups on Discord, or you can even buy them for like 1,000,000 gold each, or you can just, farm your own Wrathful Invokers and use them. You should be able to get a good roll of this heart to get this build going. Then we used the Caged Heart of Tempting Fate. This can give up to 90% critical strike damage. We are not using the Caged Heart of Tal Rasha anymore because it has been discovered that the tooltip of Caged Heart of Tal Rasha is not correct and the damage is actually additive, not multiplicative. So I'm not 100% sure if that's correct, but for now we are not using the heart anymore, and since we are aiming for almost 100% crit build here anyway, we can get the Caged Heart of Tempting Fate and it will work just fine. And for our third slot we used the Caged Heart of Revenge just for the damage reduction. 20% damage reduction is just very nice to have. Okay, Paragon Board. So this Paragon Board is not really 100% optimized. I'm still using the Paragon from the last build. I will post an updated version when I played around with this a little bit more. So first we just put our Conjurer Glyph in. We only use this for the 20% increased duration of conjurations, since this gives us more bonus and uptime on Conjuration Mastery. We don't pick all the intelligence nodes here, we just pick the 40 intelligence to reach the requirements, because the conjuration skill damage doesn't really matter all that much. Then our second board is Static Search with the Destruction Glyph. This just gives us some critical strike damage. Furthermore, we are going to pick the damage to stun enemies and mana nodes here, and we're going to pick the other damage to stun and elite damage nodes. Then we're going to the right to our third board, which is the Elemental Summoner. Here we want to pick the mana nodes again, and then we just pick the glyph, and I have the Frostbite glyph in here with the willpower bonus. This gives us a 160% damage bonus to chilled enemies. Our third board here is the Frigid Fate. which is be used to get the vulnerable damage. We just get the vulnerable damage and the tactician glyph, which gives us a 125% bonus. This is pretty much the same as in every other sorcerer's build. Then we get the vulnerable nodes here on the bottom right. And then we move over to the enchantment master board. We get all these nice non-physical damage nodes here, and we put in the control glyph with 39 dexterity, and we pick the other non-physical damage nodes here. And then moving to our last board, which is the Keysless Conduit, we just use it to get the glyph socket with the 49 dexterity to get the maximum vulnerable damage from the exploit glyph, and everything else in this board doesn't really matter at all. As I said, I'm still working on this board and I'm thinking about implementing some lucky hit from the Paragon board. I will post an updated Paragon board in the description down below when it is available. And that sums everything up for this build. I will be leaving the planner link in the description down below. And please again keep in mind, this is not a barber build. So I'm looking for a challenge here to play without the caged heart of the barber. If you want to use the caged heart of the barber because it's more simple to play and it's faster and it turns everything into AoE and you can, you know, do tier 100 dungeons on level 70 or whatever, feel free to do that. If you're looking for a challenge and a more fun to play, more meaningful build, feel free to check out this build. I will leave you now some full Nightmare Dungeon footage at the end. Feel free to watch until the very end if you're still hyped. And that's it from me, and thank you so much for watching.
Ready yet. I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet.
I need time to prepare,